Welcome back, nerds. Fino here with a guide for mysterious Ranmaru X. They're a 4-star Avenger introduced with Guda Guda Ryama's narrow escape and serve as the welfare servant for that event. They are, in fact, our very first welfare Avenger. Is Ranmaru worth the grind, or do you get what you pay for? Let's find out. But first, the thorniest issue. The contents of Ranmaru's skirt are a little mysterious. The real-life Mori Ranmaru was a dude, something we'll get back to in the history segment of the video. Mysterious Ranmaru X, as we see them in-game, is very strongly implied to be a woman, but for gameplay purposes, she's listed as unknown. To my understanding, and this is something that comes up at the very end of the event story, Ranmaru X's sex changes depending on ecology. Maybe it's like a clownfish situation where the strongest one turns into a woman. By the way, one of the funniest theories I've seen is that because Ranmaru gained the title X by becoming the strongest Ranmaru on her planet, she's technically an ultimate one like Ort. I don't know if that actually passes muster, but it would be some peak Type-Moon chicanery. Let's take a look at the skill set that allowed Ranmaru to become the alpha of her species. First up is Ranmaru Hand. This is a single turn, targeted star absorption, crit damage, and debuff cleanse combo. The magnitude on that absorption buff is a colossal 5000%, which is enough to guarantee any Avenger or Berserker the lion's share of stars per turn. Remember that those two classes have absolutely awful base absorption stats, so you need 4-digit effects to make a real difference. If you've ever wondered why your support casters always seem to vacuum up the goods, that's why. It also has a low cooldown at 4 turns, so if you manage to save it for a Brave Chain turn, your uptime won't be too bad. A little spotty, but it could be worse. Now, this being Ranmaru's default skill raises a very interesting possibility, that of an esports Ranmaru. Now, hypothetically, you could use her as a single turn swap-in to use her package of effects, and then take a dive. There are a few things raining on our parade though. Firstly, we only ever get the one copy of Ranmaru, with the rest being NP upgrades. So an esports Ranmaru would have the extremely high opportunity cost of gimping your only functional copy. And for whatever reason, the developers don't do reruns of post-Summer Adventure events. That includes Ryama's Narrow Escape, so we can't get another copy that way. Maybe Evocation will open this door in the future, but who knows. Second on the list is Ranmaru I. It's an AoE defense down, star dump, and a low probability AoE charm. It does contribute to your damage, but it's a pretty low priority all things considered. If you're just a tiny bit short of hitting a refund or damage threshold in a particular fight, you can put some points into this to try to make it work. Ranmaru's third skill is Ranmaru Strawl. It's a personal 3-turn arts buff and 20% battery. Also another star dump. The battery capping out at 20% isn't ideal, but it can still let you save a different battery somewhere in your setup, especially in combination with her Charge Append skill. Just be aware that you may have to choose between this and one of Castoria's NP gain buffs on turn 1. In general, I'd take this since it directly contributes to your damage on top of raising your efficiency. Max this out first and foremost. The linchpin of Ranmaru's kit is her Noble Phantasm, Orchid Rounds X. It's an AoE arts attack that ignores defense buffs. Its overcharge gives Ranmaru preemptive star gen for the turn you use it. Its hit count of 4 puts it near the lower end of what lets you arts loop, but it does work. Running Ranmaru with a pair of Castorias, you should be able to handle most standard nodes. Assassins are doable, but you may need a little extra help depending on the fight, something to be wary of in Berserker nodes. For a free generalist attacker though, it's a damn good deal. Ignoring defense buffs has a lot of uses against gimmick and boss fights too, so you can use Ranmaru as a leading edge to chunk them out. Ranmaru doesn't have the traditional Avenger self-replenishment passive, but she does have her own unique version, Ranmanium EX. This helps you meet loop checks against low refund enemies like the aforementioned Assassins and Berserkers. Her other notable passives include Demon King's Favor, which grants burn immunity, and Entity of the Outer Realm, a passive typically restricted to foreigners and servants influenced by foreigners. Don't run her with Van Gogh though. You'd be squandering the strengths of both. One very interesting trait of hers is that she floats on her sword, and, believe it or not, that actually has gameplay implications. Very narrow ones, but still. There's a boss in Lost Belt 7 who pretty much stunlocks any character that touches the ground. Ranmaru is on the short list of attackers who can put up some kind of fight against her. Ranmaru's Bond CE dumps out 30 stars on entry, which is kinda good. This would be a solid esports CE, which makes it all the more tragic that Narrow Escape doesn't get a rerun. I can't think of a way to utilize a full-level Ranmaru as an esports servant though. If you have a taunt CE, especially Guda Guda Poster Girl, you can rely on Ranmaru Hand and her 2 stardumps for value. Just wait for your main attacker to pull a full hand and boom. Someone like Kentoki or MH Exalter, for example, could benefit from this absorption screen combo. However, you only want to do this against extremely aggressive enemies that could feasibly take out Ranmaru in the 1 or 3 turns your taunt CE lasts. Ranmaru is a very solid mid-game character, giving you a generalist to farm standard nodes. You only buy in his Castoria, and this becomes easier once Jufu comes out as a viable budget option. Black Rail is of course ideal for pushing damage, but you can run her with something like Ocean Flyer in the interim. You can easily make a functional Ranmaru setup using the Mystic Codes, Craft Essences, and the Art Enablers of your choice. She does struggle in 90+ and 90++ because she's not Space Ishtar or Summer Kama. She doesn't have a 50% battery as a safety net, so her ability to deal with irregular enemy arrangements is going to deal on your willingness to run a plug suit and Oberon. Also, her damage isn't the most amazing thing in the world, but she can easily fill in gaps in your roster, particularly when it comes to viable casters and assassins. But here's the thing about Ranmaru. Why is such a useful mid-game character unlocked through an event that you can only play by clearing Heian-kyo? By that point, you should be getting your endgame setups established. It's ass backwards. She's still worth getting for the defense-ignoring AoE arts NP, but there's no good reason why Ranmaru needed to be this exclusive. Now then, it's history time. Ranmaru is a figure that's idealized and mythologized a fair bit, so the facts of his life can be difficult to separate from that element. With that in mind, I'll tell you his story as I know it. Ranmaru was born into the Mori clan, the same Mori clan as Nagayoshi. In fact, the two are brothers. At a young age, he became a page for Nobunaga, and the latter took quite a shine to him. He was quite possibly Nobunaga's lover. Supposedly, relationships of this nature wouldn't have raised too many eyebrows back in the day. The samurai often took young male partners who they would teach the warlike arts and codes of conduct. Greek style. Ranmaru was supposedly quite beautiful, to the point where Nobunaga refused to let him get a traditional samurai haircut. To anyone else, this would have been quite an insult, the same as telling him he couldn't become a man. But Ranmaru didn't seem all that bothered. And he wasn't just there for his looks either. He functioned as a secretary of sorts in practice, even taking on higher-level magisterial tasks. He had his own territory to manage too, but despite that, he usually stuck close to Nobunaga, preferring to serve him in person. But there is a story of one time where he went out into the field. Ranmaru wanted to spy on Uesugi Kenshin's army. Kenshin saw Ranmaru and was like, "Damn, I want a piece of that." And now that he attracted the boss's attention, Ranmaru couldn't get much spying done and had to fake his own death to get back to Oda-controlled territory. Kenshin is an FGO, by the way, though players may be more familiar with the name Nagao Kagetora, so enjoy that mental image. When he wasn't attracting the attention of dangerous men around Japan, Ranmaru was busy servicing the whims of the most dangerous man in Japan, Nobunaga himself. Nobunaga was kind of a dickhead boss, and he would fuck with his subordinates to see how they'd react. He'd give nasty, contradictory, or technically impossible orders to see if they could think on the fly, or to spot any hints of disloyalty. Ranmaru was famous for doing all these unreasonable tasks without missing a beat. Not only that, but going above and beyond. One of Nobunaga's more disgusting habits was clipping his nails and then tossing the clippings onto the floor so his retainers would have to pick that shit up. When it was Ranmaru's turn, he picked up the nails on the ground and then waited. Nobu was like, "What are you doing?" Ranmaru then pointed to a loose clipping that was stuck on Nobunaga's clothing and dutifully waited for Nobu to brush it off so he could then pick it up. So even this vile task, Ranmaru opted to complete to perfection. One time Nobunaga told his crew to guess how many decorative petals were on the scabbard of his sword. Everyone shot their shot except Ranmaru, who stayed completely silent. Nobunaga picked up on this and asked why. Ranmaru then said, "Earlier while you were taking a dump, I went and counted the number of petals on your sword, so it wouldn't be fair if I said anything." So then Nobunaga was like, "Holy shit, you psycho! Good job," and gave him the sword. But the good times had to end, and Ranmaru's story, much like Nobunaga's, ends at an Oji temple. Akechi Mitsuhide, for some unknown reason, decided he'd had enough of Nobunaga's shit and marched his forces straight at him. Maybe he wanted power for power's sake. Maybe he wanted to avenge his mother, who was killed by her captors when Nobunaga double-crossed their master. Or maybe the fucker made him pick up his nail clippings one too many times. It could have also just been simple opportunism. All of Nobunaga's major generals were on campaign, and Hinoji was deep in his territory, so Nobunaga didn't see a need to keep a big army sitting around to babysit him. There is another bit of speculation though. One day Nobunaga told Ranmaru he'd give him whatever he wanted, no matter how unreasonable, to which Ranmaru replied, "I want Otsu." This is a city near where his father had died in combat, also in service to Nobunaga. Mitsuhide got wind of this and immediately had a problem. Otsu. He was currently administering that city, and if Ranmaru gets it, Mitsuhide obviously can't have it. He thought Nobunaga was about to liquidate him, and opted to strike first with an army of 13,000. For Nobunaga, there was no winning this battle. He was caught by surprise and surrounded with only a token force to defend him. He had a few notables along, supposedly including his wife and Ranmaru. By the way, the balls on Nobunaga to bring his side piece to Enoji where he'd be right in front of his wife. Like, Nohime is not someone you fuck with. Legends say that in the battle itself, she was out there with a naginata cutting dudes apart. The defense was obviously untenable, and with injuries piling up, Nobunaga decided there was only one way out. He committed seppuku, but not before giving Ranmaru one final order. "Mitsuhide must not have my head." The traitor would no doubt have taken it as a trophy to parade around and establish his regime, so Nobunaga intended to undermine him from beyond the grave. Ranmaru and the other surviving retainers understood what this meant, and if Honnouji wasn't already on fire by this point, they made sure it was. The intense blaze would leave nothing of the pair, denying Mitsuhide his prize. Also lost was the possibility of a good night's sleep, as Mitsuhide was left to wonder whether Nobunaga had in fact survived, hiding to plan his revenge from the shadows. Nobunaga was in fact dead, and Mitsuhide had far more to worry about from the Viper's Nest that the Demon King had been sitting on. Of these ambitious and brilliant generals, Toyotomi Hideyoshi would be the first to set upon him with a tremendous vengeance, setting the stage for the next act of the Sengoku period. Thanks for watching. Like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more FGO content and stories, and come watch me at a certain streaming website where I'll be pulling for Izumo no Oguni this Sunday and Ryoma next Sunday. Links down in the description. 3 p.m. Pacific time, Friday through Sunday is when you can usually find me there. See you around.